March 1941. The Eastern Mediterranean. Admiral Angelo Iachino commands the most powerful Italian naval force assembled since the war began. The battleship Vittorio Veneto, 45,000 tons of armoured steel, leads 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 13 destroyers toward British convoy routes south of Crete. The Regia Marina is hunting. What cripples this force is not the 15-inch guns of the Royal Navy's battleships, not submarines, not mines. A fabric-covered biplane designed in 1936, powered by an engine with a reputation for catching fire, flown by a crew of 3 who will not survive the attack. The Fairey Albacore looks like it belongs in a museum. By the end of the night, it will have enabled the most devastating surface action of the entire Mediterranean War. The Albacore was supposed to replace the Swordfish. It entered service 4 years later, faster, with greater range and a higher ceiling, and it was retired before its predecessor. This is the story of how an aircraft that history forgot delivered the torpedo that history remembers. The problem facing the Fleet Air Arm in 1936 was simple to state and brutally difficult to solve. The Swordfish worked, but it was already showing its age. Open cockpit, fixed-pitch propeller, maximum speed of 139 miles per hour. The Air Ministry wanted something better, something that could operate in the conditions naval aviators actually faced, not the fair weather assumptions of peacetime specifications. Specification S-41/36, issued on the 11th of February 1937, called for a torpedo spotter reconnaissance aircraft to replace the Swordfish. Marcel Lobel, the Belgian-born chief designer at Fairey Aviation, took the assignment. He had designed the Swordfish. Now he would design its replacement. Lobel proposed both a biplane and a monoplane version. The Air Ministry, in a decision that would shape the Albacore's entire career, rejected the monoplane as raising uncertainties for the role. They wanted incremental improvement, not radical change. What they got was an aircraft that looked like a Swordfish with a greenhouse bolted on top. The prototype flew on the 12th of December 1938 from the Great West Aerodrome, now better known as London Heathrow. Test pilot F.H. Dixon took her up and found an aircraft that improved on the Swordfish in several key areas: faster, higher ceiling, greater range, enclosed cockpit with heating, a constant speed propeller instead of fixed pitch, hydraulic flaps that doubled as dive brakes, an automatic life raft ejection system. The numbers told a compelling story. Maximum speed of 161 miles per hour at 4,500 feet when carrying a torpedo, compared to the Swordfish's 139, service ceiling of 20,700 feet versus 10,700, range of 710 miles with a torpedo, nearly 200 miles more than its predecessor. The Bristol Taurus engine produced 1,065 horsepower in its basic form, rising to 1,130 in the Taurus 12 variant. The Swordfish's Pegasus managed 690 to 750, but those numbers concealed a problem that would haunt the Albacore throughout its career. The Bristol Taurus was revolutionary in theory: a 14-cylinder, 2-row, air-cooled radial using sleeve valve technology, the first 2-row sleeve valve engine to enter production. Instead of conventional poppet valves with pushrods and rocker arms, a cylindrical sleeve between piston and cylinder wall rotated to open and close ports. Roy Fedden at Bristol believed this was the future of aero engine design: larger port openings, better scavenging, cooler combustion chambers, higher compression ratios on lower octane fuel. The reality was a manufacturing catastrophe. Hand-built prototypes worked beautifully. Mass-producing interchangeable sleeves with correct tolerances proved, in Bristol's own description, disastrous. The crankshaft used a hairpin Maniton clamp design that slipped under stress, causing instant engine failure. Cylinder defects caused excessive sleeve wear. A critical vibration band between 2,550 and 2,750 RPM meant pilots had to avoid an entire range of throttle settings. The crisis peaked on the 28th of August 1940, when the Air Ministry grounded frontline Beaufort units for engine modifications, broken connecting rods, crankshaft failures, in-flight fires. Beaufort crews nearly mutinied, and the RAF ultimately re-engined many aircraft with American Pratt and Whitney twin Wasps. By the time Albacores entered widespread service, revised cylinder manufacturing and Salomon crankshaft dampers in the Taurus 12 had improved reliability considerably, but the engine's reputation never recovered. Only about 2,000 Taurus engines were ever built before production shifted to the far more successful Bristol Hercules. The Taurus powered just 2 operational types in meaningful numbers: the Beaufort and the Albacore. All 800 Albacores ever built came from Fairey's Hayes factory, test flown from that same Great West Aerodrome. Entry into service came in March 1940 with 826 Naval Air Squadron. At peak strength, 15 first-line FAA squadrons flew the type. The improvements over the Swordfish were real. The question was whether anyone would trust them. The answer came in the Eastern Mediterranean on the 27th of March 1941. British intelligence, reading Italian naval signals through ultra-decrypts, knew Admiral Iachino was coming. Admiral Andrew Cunningham, commanding the Mediterranean fleet from Alexandria, prepared an ambush. His force included the battleships Warspite, Barham and Valiant, the aircraft carrier Formidable, and escorting cruisers and destroyers. Formidable carried approximately 10 Albacores from 826 and 829 naval air squadrons, 4 Swordfish, and 13 Fulmar fighters. Against the Italian fleet's anti-aircraft batteries, and any Regia Aeronautica fighters that might appear, the Albacore crews would be almost defenceless. The first strike launched on the morning of the 28th. 6 Albacores of 826 Squadron attacked Vittorio Veneto with torpedoes. All missed, but the evasive manoeuvring forced Iachino to break off pursuit of British cruisers he had been closing on. The second strike came that afternoon. 3 Albacores of 829 Squadron and 2 Swordfish pressed home their attack against a wall of anti-aircraft fire. Lieutenant Commander J. Dalyell Stead flew his Albacore to within 1,000 yards of the battleship. At that range, his torpedo could not miss. It struck Vittorio Veneto's outer port propeller, flooding 4,000 tons of water into the 45,000-ton ship, and stopping her dead. Dalyell Stead and his crew were killed by anti-aircraft fire. They were the only Allied casualties of the entire battle. He received a posthumous DSO. With Vittorio Veneto crippled, Iachino ordered his fleet to withdraw toward Italy. But Cunningham was not finished. A third strike launched at dusk around 7:36 in the evening. 6 Albacores and 2 Swordfish attacked again. They missed the battleship, but one torpedo, likely from Lieutenant Granger Williams, struck the heavy cruiser Polar, knocking out 5 boilers and the main steam line. Polar drifted to a halt. What followed was catastrophic for the Regia Marina. Iachino, unaware that British battleships were closing using radar, sent heavy cruisers Zara and Fume plus 4 destroyers back to assist the crippled Polar. Cunningham's battleships caught them after dark at point-blank range, approximately 3,000 yards. Fume and Zara were obliterated in minutes by 15-inch gunfire. Destroyers Alfieri and Carducci went down with them. Polar, abandoned by her crew, was scuttled by British torpedoes. The final tally at Cape Matapan: 3 heavy cruisers destroyed, 2 destroyers sunk, approximately 38,500 tons of warships lost, 2,303 Italian sailors killed. Against this, the British suffered exactly 3 casualties, all from a single Albacore. Without that aircraft, none of it happens. Cunningham's battleships would have returned to Alexandria with nothing to show for the sortie. The Mediterranean fleet's greatest triumph was delivered, in the most literal sense, by a fabric-covered biplane with a troubled engine, and a crew who gave their lives pressing home an attack at suicidal range. That is what the Albacore achieved when it mattered most. Now, before we continue with the Albacore's wider war, if you're finding this useful, consider subscribing. It helps the channel and costs nothing. Back to the aircraft. Cape Matapan was the Albacore's defining moment, but not its only contribution to the Mediterranean War. The first strike in that theatre had come a month earlier, on the 13th of February 1941, when Albacores launched against the Italian port of Massawa in Eritrea. They sank the Italian steamer Moncalieri, 5,723 gross register tons by torpedo. Malta-based operations from September 1941 to June 1943 represented the longest sustained Albacore deployment. 828 Naval Air Squadron arrived at RAF Hal Far, operating alongside 830 Squadron Swordfish. By March 1942, they had merged operationally as Naval Air Squadron Malta. Virtually all anti-shipping sorties flew at night to avoid Axis fighters, using ASV radar to locate convoys and attacking with torpedoes, bombs and mines. The combined tally for these squadrons was 30 enemy ships sunk and approximately 50 damaged, though this figure cannot be disaggregated between Swordfish and Albacore contributions. The Swordfish did most of the early work. Albacores increasingly took over as 1942 progressed. In the Western Desert, 821 and 826 squadrons proved the Albacore's versatility as a land-based dive bomber and night illumination aircraft. Between June and November 1942, they flew 471 dive bombing sorties with what one historian described as proverbial accuracy. At El Alamein, they dropped flares to illuminate German and Italian positions for RAF night bombers. During Operation Torch in November 1942, 4 Albacore squadrons flew anti-submarine patrols, bombed coastal guns, and laid smoke screens. 2 Albacores from 820 Squadron sank U-331 on the 17th of November, the submarine that had previously torpedoed the battleship Barham. Albacores continued supporting the invasions of Sicily in July, 1943 and Salerno in September, with 820 Squadron on Formidable being the last carrier-based Albacore unit. Beyond the Mediterranean, the Albacore's record was mixed. The first combat had actually come in the English Channel, when 826 Squadron attacked E-boats off Zeebrugge and targets at Westend in Belgium on the 31st of May 1940 during the fall of France. The Kirkenes raid on the 30th of July 1941 was a disaster. HMS Victorious launched 20 Albacores from 827 and 828 squadrons against the Norwegian port. The midnight sun made surprise impossible. A German flying boat shadowed the fleet. Without fighter escort, the Fulmars having failed to rendezvous, Luftwaffe Bf-109s and Bf-110s were waiting. 11 of 20 Albacores were shot down. 827 Squadron was severely mauled. Admiral Tovey wrote that the material results of this operation were small and the losses heavy. One Albacore claimed a Junkers 87 shot down, possibly the only air-to-air kill ever scored by the type. The surviving Museum Albacore N4389 was one of the aircraft shot down in this raid, recovered from Norway in 1984. The attack on Tirpitz on the 9th of March 1942 saw 12 Albacores from Victorious launch torpedoes at the German battleship near Narvik. A torpedo passed within 30 feet of the bow. All missed. 2 Albacores were lost. In the Far East, 5 ex-FAA Albacores reached 36 Squadron RAF at Singapore in December 1941. During the Japanese invasion of Malaya, they flew desperate night bombing raids. On the 26th of January 1942, 3 Albacores attacked Japanese forces landing at Endau. 2 were shot down by Ki-27 fighters. During the fall of Java in late February, the sole airworthy Albacore accompanied 6 obsolete wildebeests in hopeless attacks on the Japanese invasion fleet. The survivors were captured in March. The Albacore remained in service for D-Day. 415 Squadron RCAF operated the type from Bircham Newton, Norfolk. On the 6th of June 1944, they laid smoke screens for Allied shipping approaching Normandy and helped prevent German E-boats from attacking the invasion fleet. After D-Day, Albacores passed to 119 Squadron RAF at Manston, flying against E-boats and German mini-submarines in the Scheldt estuary. Then came the supreme irony. In January 1945, 119 Squadron's Albacores were replaced by Swordfish, the Mark III variant with centimetric radar that the Albacore had never received. The replacement had outlasted its replacement. Understanding why requires understanding what changed between 1936 and 1943. The Albacore was designed for fleet carriers. It excelled in that role, but the Battle of the Atlantic created an entirely different requirement, one the Albacore could not meet. Escort carriers and MAC ships, merchant aircraft carriers converted from cargo vessels, needed aircraft that could operate from tiny decks. The Swordfish's ultra-low stall speed meant it could fly from platforms carrying just 3 or 4 aircraft. The heavier Albacore, loaded weight of 10,460 pounds versus 7,510 for the Swordfish, simply could not. The Swordfish operated from 14 escort carriers and 18 MAC ships, forming a vast Atlantic anti-submarine network. The Albacore was physically excluded from this role. Production logistics compounded the problem. Blackburn Aircraft built 1,699 of the 2,391 Swordfish at a dedicated factory and continued manufacturing spares through the war. All 800 Albacores were built solely by Fairey at Hayes. When Fairey shifted to Barracuda production, Albacore manufacturing and spares ceased. No alternative manufacturer, no spare parts, no future. Technology sealed the Albacore's fate. The Swordfish received ASV Mark II radar, then ASV Mark 11 centimetric radar mounted in a radome between its undercarriage legs. It received 8 RP-3 rockets, the first operational use against a U-boat coming on the 23rd of May 1943. The Albacore never received rockets or centimetric radar, leaving it permanently behind in anti-submarine warfare. Veterans who flew both aircraft described the Albacore as almost like a Rolls-Royce version of the Swordfish. They appreciated the enclosed cockpit, the heating, the reduced noise. The nickname Applecore suggests genuine affection. Captain Eric Brown, the FAA's most decorated test pilot, assessed the Albacore as relatively steady throughout the dive with excellent pilot visibility, but noted the very heavy elevators and ailerons. Those heavy controls were a genuine operational liability. One assessment noted that they were considered too heavy for a pilot to perform much evasive action after dropping a torpedo. In the seconds after a torpedo run, when anti-aircraft fire was most intense, that limitation could be fatal. When 119 squadron crews were forced to swap their Albacores for Swordfish in early 1945, Many lamented losing their warm and sealed cockpits for the freezing wind chill of the open Swordfish. Preference depended entirely on context. Mediterranean warmth versus North Sea cold. Torpedo attack versus anti-submarine patrol. The Albacore's obscurity stems from its lack of a single iconic action that bears its name alone. The Swordfish owns Taranto, the Bismarck Chase, and the Channel Dash for VC. The Albacore's finest hour, Cape Matapan, is remembered as a surface fleet victory. The biplane's decisive torpedo contribution reduced to a footnote. Albacore exists worldwide, a composite reconstruction at the Fleet Air Arm Museum at RNAS Yeovilton. The fuselage comes from N4172, which crashed in Scotland after engine failure in April 1941 and was recovered in 1974. The tail section comes from N4389, shot down at Kirkenes and recovered from Norway a decade. The reconstruction was completed on the 29th of October 1919. No airworthy examples exist, and the scarcity of surviving Bristol Taurus engines makes flight restoration effective. The Swordfish, by contrast, has a flying example with Navy Wings heritage. One more way the predecessor outshines its replacement in the public. Modern assessments are kinder to the Albacore than its reputation suggests. It had a more powerful engine than the Nakajima B5N or Douglas Devastator, carried radar from early in its career, and operated effectively as both torpedo bomber and dive bomber. Its short frontline career of barely 3.5 years, from March 1940 to late 1943, has fewer veterans to tell its story, fewer books devoted to its exploits, fewer models on hobby shop shelves. Overlooked is just how much action and how big an impact the Albacore had in that short period. 3 cruisers and 2 destroyers at Matapan, 30 sunk from Malta, U-31, Smones at Normandy, 471 dive bombing sorties in the Western Desert. Albacore ever built was test flown from what is now London Heathrow Airport. It helped win the Mediterranean War first, took to the air from a grass field that would become one of the busiest airports on Earth. The Albacore was not a failure. It was an aircraft caught in the wrong place at the wrong time in aviation history. Too modern for the Swordfish's escort carrier. Too obsolete compared to the Barracuda and Grumman Avenger that were on fleet carriers. Its career was short. Production run was modest. Its reputation was tarnished by an engine that flew behind it. But on the night of the 28th of March 1941, off Cape Matapan, a single Albacore torpedo set in motion a chain of events that destroyed an cruiser division. 38,500 tons of enemy went to the bottom. 2,303 sailors died. The Regia Marina recovered its confidence. The Mediterranean fleet's battleships fired the shells. But a fabric-covered biplane, with an enclosed cockpit, central heating, and a reputation trouble, delivered the blow that made it possible. British aviation was not about flying the most modern aircraft. It was about flying whatever aircraft you had, into whatever feast, and pressing home the attack until the job was done. Lieutenant Commander Daliel Stead flew to within 1,000 yards of the ship, throwing up walls of steel, and released his torpedo. He did not survive. His target did not escape. That is what the Fairey Albacore was built for. That is what the Fairey Albacore achieved. And that is why this forgotten biplane deserves to be remembered. Alongside the fish, it was designed to replace and never quite escape the shadow of. The numbers prove it. The documents confirm it. The Mediterranean remembers.